Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt, but this is the cheesy podcast bit that gets on everyone's nerves, but it's really important to me. Please, if you can like the channel and also subscribe, it helps me a lot to get the best guests in the world for you guys. So click like and subscribe. Appreciate it. Thanks. Hi, I'm Raoul, and welcome to my show, The Journeyman, where I explore that nexus of understanding between macro, crypto, and the exponential age of technology. My macro journey has been long. I've been in this business for 30 odd years. I have learnt from the greats of the industry, the Paul Tudor Joneses, Stan Druckenmillers. I've been part of the great crises. I've seen the biggest trades in the world, and I've been part of many of them, whether it was as a salesman, advising people, or whether it was running a macro fund myself, or as part of Global Macro Investor, my kind of institutional research service. I've seen a lot. But the biggest trade of all time, the biggest macro opportunity ever given, was crypto. I identified that back in 2013. Now, stupidly, I didn't take full advantage of it. I should have done, but I have done since, as I've realized it's a supermassive black hole. What's super fascinating about this is that many of my macro friends, people who grew up trading dollar yen and bonds and stuff like that, credit, have all moved across to crypto because they too see this as the biggest opportunity of all time. One of my favorite people in the entire space, close friend of mine, somebody who's been in his macro as long as I have, is Dan Tapiero. Dan is a favorite of Real Vision, favorite of mine, and I, as ever, want to pick his brains, what he's seeing, what he's thinking, where we're going, where the opportunities lie. So, no further ado, let's chat to Dan. Join me, Raoul, as I go on a journey of discovery through the macro, crypto, and exponential age landscapes. In The Journeyman, I talk to the smartest people in the world so we can all become smarter together. Dan Tapiero, how the devil are you?
I'm good. Raoul, good to see you.
Good to see you. It was only a week ago we saw each other in person, which is always nice.
Yeah, one of those panels. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I did. I was really lucky because I did like a tour of Bitcoin OGs in my entire trip, from Barry Silbert to somebody I won't talk about in San Francisco to you, Dan Moorhead. It was nice to catch up with people, and everyone's got a big grin on their faces right now.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I feel like, every new bull market, there's a new wave of people who are coming in. And it's interesting how some of the people who have been in the space for a long time, you know from what time they've come in. They're not as interested in some of the new stuff. They stay focused on, what's brought them to where they are today. I saw Dan M posted something about his Bitcoin fund, and it's up, whatever,
10,000% or 1,000%, 1,000x, sorry.
1,000x, 100,000%, or whatever it is. But, a Bitcoin fund today is not, it's in 2011 or 12, whenever he started, it was really a market genius, and, it's been hugely successful. But today, that's not very interesting for people. I think that there are many, many outlets, and being such a pioneer, I think the space is innovating and growing so quickly. You're one of the few guys who actually keeps up with everything on the edge.
Trying to, but it was interesting just to go back a bit. The guy I met in San Francisco, which I won't mention on camera, he bought Bitcoin at $3.
Yeah,
and put $2 million in.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, what else have you done? He goes, nothing really. And he's got a few businesses he's built around Bitcoin. He now is so Bitcoin standard that any investment he makes, he has to look at it. Is it going to outperform his Bitcoin? And he's made, I don't know how much he's spent on route and taken off the table, but he's made billions upon billions, probably the greatest trade of all time. He's probably done the greatest trade of all time. And completely below the radar screen now.
There are a few of those guys. I mean, there are a few of those guys around. I mean, I can remember the guy who was at the time the president of my gold company, GBI. He bought Bitcoin at $3 and he sold it at 90. And I told him, like, that's that's better than any trade I'd ever done in my whole career. That was unbelievable. And he was very, much on the cutting edge, close with Barry Silbert as well.
Who I saw as well.
I've been 12. But yeah, to have the fortitude to stay with it till today,
that's crazy. Hi, Raoul here. Listen, I think we've got until 2030 before the economic singularity arrives. Now, it might not be the exact date, but it's around then. So we have about 6 years to figure out how to unfuck our future. I've put together a report to help you called Prepare for 2030. It's going to help you take the first steps in that journey to make sure you're secure past 2030. So just click on the link below and start your journey now. Listen, a lot suddenly changed because, you and I have been in the space for a while. We've seen the regulatory hurdles been particularly applicable on your side because you've got companies in the space who you're investing in. Suddenly, everything's changed. Talk me through what you think of these changes, because this was the big talking point on my trip. When I saw you and everybody else, everyone's like, okay, finally we're free.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. I don't think anyone could have sort of discounted the degree to which things changed, the speed. We went from being in a regulatory environment in the U.S., where companies were being, in an outright way attacked, sued, Coinbase, Kraken, Ripple. There was the Operation Choke Point thing where difficult for certain companies and entities in crypto to even get bank accounts. So it was extremely hostile, and people were leaving the US to set up in other places around the world. So we went from extremely hostile to extremely friendly, potential crypto hub of the world in a matter of weeks. And so, we knew, look, Trump owns crypto and Elon is crypto and the cabinet all has crypto and the Congress. So, and it's not crypto, it's also Web3, blockchain, digital assets. It's everything. It's not just let's own Bitcoin and sit back and hodl. And so I think it's the possibility of having the largest, most important, wealthiest country, most important, strongest government, actually coming out there now and incentivizing the development of blockchain crypto, incentivizing companies to set up here and not elsewhere. If that happens, I really think the U.S. just blows away everybody else. Europe will never be able to shift this quickly. Asia is fractured. China changes its mind every 18 months. People don't trust what's going on there. And this is absolutely the right maneuver. I don't know if you remember, but 5 years ago when we had our first Bitcoin chat, it was the summer of 2019. And I said in that chat, I didn't understand why the US was not at the forefront of this, because it would allow us to have a digital dollar via the stablecoin. Stablecoins didn't exist back then, but I thought if you have Bitcoin as your core collateral, you have stablecoins that are largely dollar-based, you have a massive advantage. And the U.S., it took 5 years, or maybe it's been in development for the last sort of, I think, 2-3 years. People have been saying, wow, this is a great technology. Why aren't we harnessing this, right? I think that's and now, look, 99% of the stable coins are still dollars.
And don't forget that they're now one of the biggest buyers of treasuries.
Yeah, that too.
The other thing that's interesting to me is what you mentioned is, you and I know, because we've all spoken to people, is the finance system's been waiting for the green light. The big Web 2 companies have been waiting for a green light. There's a lot of people been waiting for a regulatory green light. Now, we haven't got it yet because we need regulations. But I look at the finance system, and I think one of the things you've been talking about as well is if they're going to build, there's an obvious choice for them, which is going to be Ethereum. Ethereum has the native yield, and it is the kind of IBM or Microsoft of the space. I think people are underestimating how fast finance is going to come because they've all been working on it. And it's a very likely an Ethereum ecosystem thing overall. Thoughts?
Yeah,
obviously it was spread across everything, but...
Yeah, I've always believed in this sort of multi-chain world, the different blockchains can have different use cases. I mean, Bitcoin, no question, is the collateral for the whole space, and we've talked about that I don't know how many times. The smart contract platform, Solana, Speed, but there are other things like Sui and Sei that are coming up that will find specific use cases, right? So it shouldn't be that meme coins are on the Bitcoin blockchain. Come on. It's fine that it's on Solana and all the activity is there. So I think that the number of use cases is so great. We haven't even seen what I think is, and I've been looking for companies in this area, but what I think is one of the most important use cases, which is the use of the permanent ledger. The fact that whatever is stamped on that blockchain is there forever, can be verified, that truth machine concept. There are still very few companies out there or people that are applying the power of that to business generally. And, so for instance, could there be a blockchain that focuses specifically on that aspect that doesn't exist today? Sure. Are there going to be blockchains that maybe focus more on RWAs? Or will there be one that is more of an NFT-based one? Will there be an art one? Will there be one for property and real estate? Everything can't go on one chain. So, we're in the business, the funds, of investing in businesses that are leveraged to all of the developments that are happening in the digital asset ecosystem. I don't think I have the skill set, and I think it's more of a venture type investor that is going to sit there, take apart the code, work with a foundation, grow a specific use case on a specific chain. I know you're on the foundation of Sui. And so, you rolled up your sleeves there. You've been 100% right. I mean, really hats off to you. That's been phenomenal. But, I haven't done that work. So I don't know what's Sui's reason for, existence. I'm sure it has one. What is that they've carved out? Just out of interest now.
Basically, because they were the team from Facebook that built Libra.
Yeah.
So they're a very smart, well-proven team that's done big things. Obviously, it got shut down by governments. But what they did is they just went and said, we're just going to build the entire Web 2 stack, not just the protocol layer of the token, but we'll build on top of it. We'll build a liquidity layer. We'll build a distributed data storage layer. So they've taken all the component parts of Web 2, because they're from Facebook, they understand it, and have rebuilt them all as different protocols on top of the Sui layer. So it's also extremely fast.
Sorry? What's its edge? Is it the speed, and what else?
It's extremely fast. So it's faster than any other protocol in the world. So the latency to settle a transaction is 400 milliseconds. It's stupid fast. And it's infinitely scalable. It just needs more compute hardware. So it's infinitely scalable. So TPS is not an issue. So none of the restraints of normal blockchains are an issue. It's also got a new language that uses something called object-based programming, of which you can do a lot more within it that's not possible now. So it's the flexibility, the new programming language, the speed, and then the full stack that they're building, that really what they're trying to do is go for let's say gaming is one, financial markets and other stuff, sure, but really it's the Web 2 infrastructure layer, the whole thing, that they have the capability to go after. So it's very, very interesting. They're kind of very focused. They know what they're doing. They're super smart people. So let's see, these things are bets.
I think I probably missed the GMI that you talked about it. I mean, I'm sure you've gone through the whole thing.
Yeah. So it's super interesting. So the other thing, I think, let's go back to macro first before we go back into this.
Okay.
We've got where are we in the macro cycle for you? And then we'll talk a little bit about Scott Bessent, because we have a bit of edge there as well.
Well, I think the Fed is still in a lowering rates mode. Why unemployment has stayed so low, I think that maybe is, I wouldn't mind getting your view on that.
Immigration.
Yeah. Well,
It was immigration.
the data is all sort of slowed down, 2 to 3% GDP, 2 to 3% CPI. I mean, this is all just trend stuff. I don't, and I think rates are probably a little high still. I still think 3 is probably the right number that we see in this cycle, especially if they're going to tighten fiscal policy. So this is something, leads into the best in question. I think he and some of the other macro guys, and, you and I have known him a long time. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but we've certainly had, plenty of interaction. Very smart, very capable.
Yeah, he even came to my house in Spain.
Yeah,
I don't know if you were at that round table, but yeah, he's been to my house.
And very macro, like really this is
yeah.
the first Treasury secretary that really knows markets. He's very successful as a fund manager and actually has a view on currency, actually has a view on what the interest rate should be. I think, the person at the Fed, I know they're talking about bringing in Warsh. Is that too? I think the two of them would work really well together. Warsh was at the Fed before, right? And he's a younger.
That's right.
It would be.
He's another ex-Soros guy, I think.
Well, yeah, and works.
No, it's for Stan. He worked for Stan. That's right.
Yeah, and I think the two of them together would be great. But I think they both have the mentality of tightening fiscal budget, tightening fiscally, and so now with Doge, with Elon, leading Doge, I think you are going to see a rationalization of the U.S. Government. People say, "Oh, it's harder than you think." They won't be able to do it. I mean, everyone said that about everything Elon is doing. So, good luck taking the other side of Elon. He'll be doing construction up on Mars, within 10 years, and people say, "Oh, it's impossible today." So, rationalizing the U.S. government, maybe putting some of the processes on blockchains, that might be helpful. Injecting AI potentially into the process also is, you're more of an expert than I am on that, would be very helpful. So I see it as a whole package: fiscal tightening, fiscal rationalization, AI, bringing the government processes and functions up to a 2020 level. Many of these things are still left in 20th century,
And I think, from what Scott has said, made clear is, yes, they want the kind of fiscal cleanup, so we're issuing less bonds, so i.e. a lower deficit. But they're not just going to wholesale throw people out into the streets, as you said. They want to create efficiencies and deregulation, which Scott's bet is they've only got one choice here. You either keep compounding the debts at record levels, or you try and generate some GDP growth. And this entire government is all about GDP growth. And Scott said, I want to get the oil price lower and the dollar weaker. I mean, this is like macro heaven. If he can pull this off, this is like perfect situation. Deregulation, lower oil, lower dollar, and lower rates.
Lower dollar for a second. I mean, I'm not sure why we need that.
Because China and Japan and all of the others can't buy US goods because you can't export your way with too strong a dollar. China's kind of at a choke point because of the currency. And so everyone just wants the dollar lower because it ignites world trade.
I know, but we don't need that.
You've got to export stuff if you want to reduce the deficit.
I don't know. I think that's very old line macro circuit, 1988 or 2004.
Scott said this very thing.
I don't get it. I think if you tighten fiscally and you rationalize the government, the capital inflow into the U.S. as a result of, corporations, being leaner, the government leading the way in that area. I just think all inflow for investment is going to offset any, why would anyone not want to invest in the U.S. with this team that we have? I'm just saying, okay, with this team that we have, the interest rates could be lower, but no one else in the world is even close to approaching this. There's no activist government out there that has, a proper macro person running Treasury, I think eventually another person, at the Fed of that caliber, the people that they're bringing in, if I were in another place, I would want to have my money here. So
but don't forget, we had similar under Reagan. The dollar went down because they wanted it. So my general view is the dollar is in a secular bull market, but cyclically, they want it a bit lower. Okay.
So I had been bearish on the dollar for a while, and my view is sort of changing now. I may be wrong. I may be wrong about it. I haven't been a dollar bull in a very, very long time. But I think this is a structural one-off shift up. And no government can compete with the government we have today. And there aren't companies like the ones we have in the US outside. I mean, I see it even in the crypto space. A lot of the volume is outside of the US, 80% of it right now. But not as many, quality companies outside as you would hope, given that they're 80% of the total trading volume. So, all right, put that to the side for a second. I hear you on the dollar, but this is the first time in a while. I think of in my head, if I'm a foreign investor, what am I? I believe in China, or there's a company.
No, I totally get that. My view is cyclically, as the economy starts growing properly, you tend to get a weaker dollar. I think once we've got tariffs plus a reduction of deficits, we probably end up with a very strong dollar 2026, 27.
If they're right on growth and productivity, and we streamline everything, I just don't see how that isn't possible. Meaning, the stronger dollar won't hurt us, right? I mean, the old macro thinking is that a strong dollar is, reduces growth, right? That's
global growth,
and also our growth, right?
Because you can't export it. Because who do you export to? Everyone's a bit sluggish, right? China's in the shit. Europe's a mess right now as well. Who the hell do you export to? And you've got to export your way out, because you need the deficit to go down, the trade deficit as well, and you've got to sell goods. But if you're too expensive, it's not a great way of generating rapid, strong growth. But as you said, it's very offsetting because the US is their only home of investment right now. So it's complicated, I guess.
Yeah, I think we have to wait to hear what Vescent's actually thinking on this.
Yeah. So where are we in the space right now? Because you always follow the adoption of the space at the broadest level. Where are we in that story?
Total active addresses across top blockchains.
Oh, yeah, that's just stunning.
I mean, like, we looked at, I don't know, 1 million charts in our career, and I don't know that I've ever even seen one like this. 164 million active addresses. Some people, question this data. We've done a lot of work. We think this is the legit data. 6 million in January of 21, right? Total active addresses across the top blockchains. And it stayed at it was 20 million at the beginning of the year, and it's just spiked up to 164 million. So we're up, almost 7x this year. We're up, 3x in the last 2 months. These are massive, massive numbers. So when I think about, adoption, it's not just people owning a Bitcoin. It's how widespread is the use and interaction with the top, 5, 10 blockchains. And so this chart encompasses all on-chain blockchains, including swaps, purchases, airdrops, NFT, signing transactions, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's everything. It's how much activity is moving into the digital asset sphere. So I don't know.
It's massive. The acceleration in the trend is just vast, and it's only going to get bigger because we've just unleashed a new understanding, which is like these AI agents are likely to use blockchains, and they're infinitely scalable in numbers. There's no limit to the total population or whatever. There's infinite, And you can start to see how much activity can go on chain, as you say, because so much of the world is still off chain, and this new government and what everybody else is doing is just going to bring more and more of this activity. You know, once you bring all driver's licenses on, all digital IDs on, you know, if you put your ID, digital ID in the US on, that's 370 million users come on immediately. They're not using blockchains as in buying and selling crypto. They're using the rails for proof, which is that trust layer you talked about.
Yeah. And we haven't seen any of that yet. If you put the other chart up, that is the number of blockchain transactions processed per second. Blockchains now process 50 times as many transactions per second as they did just 4 years ago. 50 times. Like, I keep saying this, right? I don't know anything that grows like this. What grows like this? Maybe, it's certainly not the financial world. Like, maybe there's some, venture tech areas.
No, there isn't. I mean, AI has been fast, right? Really, really fast. But nothing like this, certainly nothing that is financialized. AI is not financialized. This is financialized, and it's growing at a pace. When I just look at the larger measure of active addresses, again, not accurate, but compare them to IP addresses of the internet, same kind of thing. We'll have multiple wallets, we'll have multiple IP addresses. We're growing at twice the speed of the internet and have been for 10 years. This is la la land.
Yeah, and I think the TAM of the space is much larger. I mean, there's a lot more, right? There are only 7 billion people out there, but, hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars of value. You can see here, even the next one, stablecoin volume continues to rival traditional payment rails. The comparison there with Visa, I think stablecoin transaction volume is going to surpass Visa this year. So anybody that is really thinking about still use case, etc. Then there's the chart of total centralized exchange volume, which is just broken out in November, back to the highest. It's probably going to be the second highest month ever, right? Only that, April, May of 21 number was higher. So this is more people, of course, coming in. This is another sort of measure.
Here's another one for you, Dan, that most people don't realize. There's 500 million brokerage accounts in traditional finance across the world. China, India, the US, Europe, everything. 500 million. There's 500 million crypto accounts across crypto brokerages, 500 million customers. So we're already at the same size of the number of investors, and we're going to go well past it. And then we're going to see the size come across, right? Because it's been smaller, it's been more retail. But as you and I know, the bigger investors are coming. First, it's the family offices, then it's the endowments, and then it's the pension plans, and then it's the sovereigns. And, so there's a flippening happening in the financial system that people are not aware of yet.
Yeah, I think, 500 million accounts, that's a lot. I think the ETFs, you have a nice chart on the Bitcoin supply back in ETFs, that's gone up. And now all of a sudden you have L2s, you have total Bitcoin L2 volume, that is up 10x this year. And so if I look out over the next 2 years, the thing that I think could really take off is US-based DeFi.
Yeah.
So, DeFi 2 years ago basically got pushed outside of the US. And so the first step for everybody is, through a centralized exchange, they come on their Kraken or Gemini or whatever, Coinbase, they buy their Bitcoin. But now, especially Coinbase, Kraken too, now they've made it easy to port over into DeFi. Not everyone is going to buy a Ledger and go in through Ledger Live or have MetaMask. But I do think that once these institutional guys, they're going to own their Bitcoin through the ETF or whatever, they're going to own their Ethereum, they're then going to start to understand as they watch it, as they focus on it, that it's really the decentralized financial world that has the ability to grow. I mean, TVL, total value locked in DeFi, is, I think, around $100 billion, which is very small. The total value in the space today, if I add up all the cryptocurrency and all the equities, around $4 trillion. So of that $4 trillion, sitting there, only really 2% of it is actually active in DeFi. And I think that's gonna, I think that's gonna change.
And also, we've just seen that tornado cash ruling last night.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to dig into that. What was the...
So really, they tried to prosecute a person, a developer, for a piece of code, which was a DeFi, decentralized finance protocol. And it got thrown out by the Court of Appeal, saying you can't prosecute code. And so, it's under freedom of speech, code is. And so it just makes DeFi much more doable now. Well, and also, don't forget, bloody Trump's son has got a DeFi protocol. I mean, if that's not a big enough signal, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I know. I tend not to be so, I don't know what the word is. I don't think everyone only acts for themselves all the time. I mean, it's sort of tedious if you're behaving that way all the time. I do think that there is a bigger vision here, now in the US, that this is a technology that needs to be harnessed. And I think that, look, it's still a great opportunity. We talked about it for the first time 5 years ago. We said it was early, but we weren't sure that it was so early. You were hardcore into it in 2012, and I was sort of dabbling it in 13 and 14. But I think now there is this greater, just the beginning of this broader understanding that it really can permeate everything. And I think one of the first places it's going to start also is in the equity universe. Of course, I'm speaking my own book here a little bit. We have many private companies that we think in the next 18 months could become, potentially public companies. And I'm hoping NASDAQ and the SEC and this whole new regime that come in want to encourage companies that are successful, that are buttoned up, that, look like public companies, from, help and encourage them in a way by not attacking them, but hopefully moving.
Yeah, I think
because Raoul, there's only really Coinbase and maybe MicroStrategy, but to me that's more of a Bitcoin ARB specific play. It's not really an operating business. And Galaxy, which is smaller, and Galaxy's 8 billion market cap. Coinbase is 80. So I keep saying that I don't know many things with a 99% degree of certainty, but I know with a 99% degree of certainty that Coinbase is not going to be the only large public blockchain crypto company in the next 5 years. And, I think Circle will see, and potentially eToro, and, Kraken has been talking about it for a while, maybe even Ledger at some point. These are companies, making a few $100 million in revenue. And the public has no ability really to get exposure. So I think, yes, you own your Bitcoin and ETH. Maybe you dabble in SUI and Sei and, a few of the others. But for most people who want to have some equity exposure,
it's not possible, right? It's just not.
No,
yeah, I'm sure. Look, I actually think Coinbase goes up to $500 billion, $500 billion.
Me too. I think that's eventually the right number.
I mean, and that's a great opportunity, but there's plenty more opportunities. The capital markets have been closed to this stuff. The other thing I think is coming is because nobody else has been able to be involved, M&A is coming, whether it's the Web 2 companies or the financial industry, because that you might as well buy as opposed to try and build from scratch.
Yeah,
that's the other big thing.
Yeah, we're involved right now in several different transactions. I'm not going to talk about them, but my whole team is sort of activated in this way. So there are several companies that we have. Some of them are ones that we own both sides, and they're also introductions that we've made. In the whole 1RT 10T universe, and we invested in 24 companies, deployed over 1.2 billion. So we have board representation on 12 of these companies. So it's very easy for us in the middle to act as a go-between, put companies together. I mean, I wouldn't say it's very easy. It's easy to make an introduction. It's not easy to necessarily facilitate it. But, we're doing our best in that regard.
You broadened out the types of businesses you invest in. You've gone to very much more Web3 businesses as well, things like, in the NFT ecosystem, around the Animoca stuff. You've invested in, the guys here in Cayman, Ledden, who are Bitcoin lending, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
And you've also yourself, I think, and as part of this whole Dan industrial complex, have been involved in the new, what's it called?
Zenrock. So that's really interesting.
The Dan industrial complex. This is what it is now.
That's funny. It's funny. No, we just closed. We had a smaller secondaries fund that we raised for the last sort of 9 months. We've been buying the secondary stock. I try to buy in the companies where I have board seats and I have good visibility, but it's really in the ecosystem. We have a special sits component. We're raising our own SPAC now as well in this fourth fund, potentially the SPAC companies in our area.
Very interesting.
And
is the SPAC market open yet?
Well, apparently, this is, well, I don't know if it is in the way that it was in 21, like a gorge fest, but I think selectively it's a great way to bring companies public in a shorter period of time and, et cetera. There are pluses and minuses versus an IPO. And then Zenrock is a company we transformed that we had invested in Credo. We bought it. It had ran into some problems. We bought it out of administration, restructured it, refocused it. And the core tech is this multi-party computation tech, which is the next level of security after multi-sig. We have our own tech. We built it over 4.5 years, and I had just always thought this would be the backbone to decentralized custody. So 4 years ago, I had this. I love this concept of not having your assets custody in a single place, like Fireblocks. They do a great job, but it's a single place. When you have your Bitcoin that's wrapped, that's moving around to DeFi, it's generally historically been just in BitGo. And so I thought, well, this company had come up with the idea of not having your Bitcoin in a single source, having it stored in the network. And to me, that was just like an incredible concept to be able to, because I'd been in the physical gold sales and storage business. And I always thought of, some of the storage businesses in the digital space as like the vaults, of cyberspace. And then I thought, well, what if you can actually hold your digital assets not in a single vault, but you can hold it in many vaults at the same time? And so this tech allows for that. And I just thought, well, what can we really, what can we do with that? What more can we do with that? And we came up with this idea of, and this is our first product, and it's going to be launched in a few weeks, called Zen BTC, which will be the first decentralized yield-bearing wrapped Bitcoin product.
Where does the yield come from?
Okay, so that's
it's always the question, right?
That's always the question, and it'll come from the validators. It'll also come from MEV. It'll come from EigenLayer, and this is where I traditionally hand off the specifics of where the yield comes from to Randy Little, who is partner of mine and CEO of the business. It's not a huge amount of yield, but it'll be a few percentage points.
If we go back to our very first part of our conversation, we would talk about friends of ours who have billions and billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin. They've never had yield. They've never been able to do anything with it.
Well, they may not want yield.
They may not. Well, they don't need yield. Yeah, but I get it. But there's plenty of Bitcoin in the system that could do with a yield, and it's great collateral. It's the best collateral in the system.
Yeah, and to have it, to have the Bitcoin stored not in a single place, it just always struck me as weird that the Bitcoin that, WBTC, the Bitcoin for WBTC is stored at BitGo. It's just one place. And so people who move around in DeFi I wouldn't think they're the people who would want their Bitcoin in one place, single point of failure. And so it takes a little bit of sort of magic. I think I kind of see it's like a little magical, the tech to make this happen. But I think DeFi is going to explode. Bitcoin is exploding. Bitcoin is collateral. If we can do something a little different and offer yield in a conservative way, I think that's just a bonus. But yeah, we went to we fully operate Zenrock. It's Zenrock Labs that is launching this product, and we actually have a token launch. That's I think it's Friday. Can you believe it? We have a business that we have actually, and it's taken months and months and months.
This is very cool. Who'd have thought you'd be doing this, right?
Oh no, I know the Rock token. The Rock token. We're having our TGE token generation event. It's going to be key to our sort of ecosystem. And look, I think if we can get just a little bit of TVL in ZenBTC, it really becomes something that will become a big focus for us. So, part of the reason I shifted a little bit into that was that, growth equity, which is sort of first 24 investments that we made, companies generally investing more than 50, with over 50 million in revenue. For the last 18 months, there really hasn't been a single proper large growth deal. Zero. And my specific area, so not venture like BC and later these more developed companies, really got hurt by the SPF FTX debacle because he plugged a lot of the growth investors into stock and they got killed. And these are people who were successful in the old world, massive firms, Thoma Bravo, and I don't know, Silver Lake, Tiger, Coatue, Temasek, all of these very large, they didn't get hurt just in FTX, but they invested at very high multiples, 50 to 80 times revenue in some cases, in these crypto blockchain businesses that, promised the world and didn't deliver. And I think they really soured on the space. So the capital has not come back into the growth equity space just yet. I think it's coming. I think we'll start to see some deals. As you mentioned, M&A. We have companies that we think are ready to be brought public. But the venture side, the venture space has come back. It's, the most risky things in our space are exploded. It's and the VCs doing seed and pre-seed things that's been ongoing. But the larger companies still are suffering from the fallout, the reputational fallout. The space, the space's reputation was damaged for those external, larger $50 billion funds, $100 billion U.S. pension funds or larger institutional entities that were sort of duped into some of the fraudulent names. Look, there still is a little bit of a Wild West component to the space. I do feel like we are pioneers. I've said this to you before. It's like 1840 and we're heading west and we're pioneers. And there are all sorts of dastardly dudes and all sorts of people are out to get you. It's like you're going out to dig for gold and you find a little gold and then, all of a sudden someone tries to rob you. And so, there's a little bit of that. I think we're moving away from that. But you get things like FTX and they're the poster child. So anyway, this next bull phase, I think we're going to see, I'm thinking at least 160, 180,000 Bitcoin, 8, 9, 10,000 Ethereum. I'm being conservative. Solana probably could double from here. I've always thought that even a year or 2 years ago, sort of 150 to 180 was my target based on the way things have moved in previous bears to bulls the last 3 cycles. I don't know if you have any, our companies, by the way, are all like kicking butt. I didn't get into that, but almost all of them are near record revenue or will be in the next, few months.
My general view is I hear the conservative numbers, and I think it's always good to anchor yourselves on those, particularly when you're building a business. I think for me, the base case, the base case is kind of 250. So 150 low side, 250 normal, 450 blow off 2017 cycle.
By the end of 25?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Don't forget, I was 2017.
Yeah.
I sold out at 2000 just before that, the usual tax season where it falls in like March, April, May, June, right? I sold out 2000. It went up 10x in 4 months at the end of the year. 10x.
Yeah, but those are smaller numbers. We can't go up 10x.
No, but that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying. Listen, it's possible to go up 3x in the last part of the cycle if we get a very strong cycle. That's all I'm saying is that I think that tail is because people have so much PTSD. I think it's underpriced. I'm not saying it's my base case,
but you know how much value will be added to the digital asset.
I think your number of 10 trillion is. Yeah, I think 10 trillion is underestimating it for this cycle. I think it's close to 12, 13, something like that this cycle.
Yeah.
I think your whole 10T idea is going to sound hilariously outdated very soon.
It brings me right back to the beginning. The first thing we discussed, you can tell where somebody entered the space because 10T will be a joke. It wasn't when it was 300 billion in 2019. 30x, people were like, "You're nuts. There's no way." But I think 10 will be too small by far, right?
Yeah, way too. I mean, I think within 10 years, if I just follow the log regression channel of market cap, or use a Bitcoin version and impute something out of it, I get to 100 trillion by 2034. Now that makes sense because all other assets are 100, 200, 300 trillion. A lot of assets are going on to this. It's going to be a lot of activity. I don't think that's wildly wrong. That kind of suggests we're only 3% there because it's 3 trillion today. It's
what was that first call you had? Did you call for Bitcoin? What was that very first one in that article?
So I said, I think it's worth $1 million. It's worth 700 ounces of gold at the time.
What year was that?
That was 2013.
Okay,
and I said, I'm going to discount myself by 90% because this sounds stupid to call for $1 million Bitcoin when it's 200. So I'm going to say 100 grand. So we hit my original target from 11 years ago. And I still think we'll hit the other target, which is now 700 ounces of gold is now $2 and a bit million. So I do think somewhere, and that was a bad math calculation, random numbers based on stock to flow, but it kind of feels about right.
Yeah.
You know? I think, that sounds about right, you know?
Yeah. I wonder, it's interesting because we're talking about these big numbers. And of course, you've got Michael Saylor out there who's, sucked a lot of air out of the room. Rightfully so. I think he's been incredible for the space. But I haven't sort of sensed as much enthusiasm yet as in previous cycles, right? Like I don't feel somehow, I don't know, maybe it's because some of these altcoins, et cetera, are still down 90%. If you look at some of them, not Ripple, which is now exploded, but some of these.
Yeah, we just started to sit in the last 2 weeks where things are doing 50% in a day. That's what brings in retail. And I know from my WhatsApp messages that people are coming back, but these were, I'm only getting back last cycle people and not new cycle people yet.
Right. So we're not above where we were in 21 in terms of emotion and this and that.
No.
I mean, it's very, I mean, if you're new to this space, you might think, oh, it's crazy. It's this, it's that. It feels very tempered. People feel like, I feel like ho hum. Someone told me we have some companies where the founders have been in the companies they founded 7, 8, 9 years ago, and they are really tired.
Yeah.
And
it's a tough market to be in, right?
It's as I always say, it trades 5 times as long as the S&P per year, right? Because it's 24/7, 365. The S&P is only 8 hours a day or whatever it is, and so every 1 year in the old world is like 5 years in our world, And if you started a business 9 years ago and you lived through, 3 bulls and 3 bears, that's like 40 years in the old world. And so we have, founders that are interested to sell their businesses, even though, you'd look at them and you'd say, well, why are you interested? This is the greatest business ever. You're kicking butt. You're making a huge amount of money. And they just say, like they started it from zero and now maybe they have $1 billion in it or whatever the number is. So I feel like the volatility in this space is really, really chews people up.
It does. Particularly, Dan, you know this because you see it. Building a business in a very volatile asset means that your cost base has to become flexible. Absolutely. That's the hardest part, right? The hardest part is the cyclicality of your revenues versus your cost base, which means every time you have a down cycle, you spend 18 months of firing people. And it's so that is really hard.
Hire them on the up move, which is kind of, you try to game it a little bit, right? You
do, but it's hard. I mean, I was with one of the blockchain, one of the centralized exchange guys at Barry Silvert's thing. Yeah, and they're like, we're done. We just can't do. It's hard. And this guy,
you mean tired?
Tired.
That's like in their mid-30s who are just wiped from 10 years.
Like, we fired 77% of our staff. Yeah. And now we're having to rebuild again. And now we're desperately trying to hire staff. And it's like, this is just too hard.
It's difficult. I agree. I wonder, look, I think the volatility sort of going forward, next 10 years can't possibly be what it's been the last 10 years. But the way markets work, everyone always gives up at the exact wrong time.
Always.
Like it's so good. And
it's like Bitcoin ETH right now, right? That cross, you've been pointing it out. It was like,
I'm not watching the cross. I just watch the price.
I'm watching the cross and just hearing people just capitulate. ETH's a piece of shit. It's never going anywhere. They've screwed it up. Vitalik's a moron. I'm like, we've seen this all before.
Right. And at 2,500, it was really low. 2,700 a few weeks ago, I started looking at it. And I just thought, this is way too cheap. With Bitcoin at 80,000, this is ridiculous. And I started putting out some tweets. I tweeted something last night, like ETH not dead. They kept saying ETH. And there's such like rivalry or, tribal behavior. Tribal behavior is always wrong. It's just like buying at an emotional extreme when you feel great is always wrong. Selling when you are feeling bad is always wrong. So, it just felt like, the ETH community, I guess at the moment, doesn't really have a sailor. It doesn't have a guy out there, with an enormous amount of energy. I mean, Vitalik's a programmer. He's thinking about stuff, the nuts and bolts, as are some of the other core people.
And I think it'll be the financial system. I think people suddenly they'll be going, oh, so-and-so's building on this layer 2 and so-and-so's doing this. And then people will go, oh, I get it now. My thesis was that they just overbuilt block space for where we were, but that was forward planning for a future because we're going to need a lot of block space. And Ethereum is very secure. It's interoperable across a whole bunch of EVM stuff, and nobody gets fired for building on it. And so it'll be fine. It'll be just fine.
The question really is, over the next year or two during this next bull phase, is there anything that we see growing? You're the exponential guy, exponentially that we're not really focused on right now. Like, do you have one of those outlier ideas, maybe something that's starting to creep?
I think, listen, the one that I think is probably the biggest of all in terms of numbers, outside of like gaming and stuff we all know about, it's ID. It's digital ID and proof of AI, proof of humanity. It's this idea that you're saying of the security truth layer of blockchain is going to become, it's very, very important. Now, I know WorldCoin are doing it. I met another group recently doing it, but
Ledger is working on something also.
That's right. Ledger's got this as one of their big ideas. I think that's wildly underpriced because
how are we going to monetize that? I mean, how
it's just
we're markets guys, right? Like it's so much easier for me to, figure out how a business what's connected to.
I would just say it's just on-chain activity. Just owning the token of the chain. The business, look, I don't know. They'll figure something out, but that's less interesting to me than bringing 385 million Americans and forcing them into using zero knowledge proof of who you are for all of the US government infrastructure. I mean, that creates a lot of activity. Driving licenses, all of that kind of stuff, So I think that's an area. Is it investable for you? Maybe, maybe not. Don't know. I think you're right that DeFi is still wildly underpriced. I think big pools of capital like Apollo, Blackstone, these huge pools will lend into these markets now. Because they're just lending markets. They know how to do this, but they've not been able to. So we can see a massive amount of liquidity coming into these.
Yeah, I love the borrowing lending business because no one wants to sell their Bitcoin. So it's obvious, makes sense.
The other one that...
Yeah, I was just saying, every cycle we get hit with something that we never, anticipated that it, you were involved in the art and NFT stuff. Does that come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. The high end of the art market is ripping and there's very little available already.
Okay.
Because it's a recycling of wealth, right? The art market well. As soon as people make money, they buy art. And that whole thesis plays out here. And if I'm right, it goes from 3 trillion to 100 trillion in value. Even if I'm wrong by 50%, that's a lot of wealth. A huge, preposterous amount of wealth. And art will benefit, as it always does. So that one's a decent idea. The other thing that we do need to, let me know if you've seen this yet, is an exchange essentially wrapping equities and other assets. FTX did a bit of it, but that's going to generate a lot.
I think Figure is thinking about it, Mike Cagney's firm.
Yeah.
I think...
Or NASDAQ do it instead.
Kraken has talked about it.
They were looking at buying a brokerage at one point, a traditional brokerage.
You talked about it. I think the two worlds come together. So
That's right.
I don't think the old world just disappears. Maybe people with an old world mentality disappear, but I think that it can't. There's too much. It's hundreds and hundreds of trillions.
Robin Hood are probably in a unique situation to do that.
Could be doing it.
Because they've got 24/7 equity trading.
Okay.
So there's no reason why that can't go on chain, and then you've got this, storage of equities, and gets rid of all of those bloody middlemen.
You know what it is? It's just the digitization of ownership, right? It's allowing people to own all different kinds of things, right? Just what's up.
Sorry, I love because go back about 7 or 8 years ago, and you're over here in the Cayman looking at buying gold vaults. And
yes,
now
I was.
And now you own crypto storage companies, custody companies.
I know.
And it's so different than that physical. Remember, you and I went to that bank. We were looking at their vault, measuring it up. Can we get gold in? How the world has changed, right? Physical ownership is so different.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you're just going to warrant a little kerfuffle there.
Well, it was just so old world compared to today.
I know it is. It is funny. Maybe we'll be doing this on Mars 10 years from now, right? I really think, I can't think of any single person that's been able to. I know we're jumping around a lot today to different topics, but if you just think about, our job really is to think about the future, what's happening, assess the risk and reward of it, but it's incredible how one person has been able to shape so much. I mean, he bought Twitter. That was just like yesterday, essentially. And that was a real vehicle. Now he's tweeting every 10 seconds. And they're interesting, good tweets. And then he's running these companies. And he basically, his goal in life is to, make us a multiplanetary species. And he's starting with Mars. So I don't know the science behind it, but I'm thinking like that maybe really is a thing.
I have a lot of wilder theses about this, but the guy's not human. Even in the humorous way of not human. How do you run Tesla, SpaceX, the largest private satellite communication business, a robotics company, a car company, a boring company, a neuro company, then run Twitter and be one of the largest tweeters, and now the US government?
What about that video game thing? He's apparently the number one video game guy on that video game.
Oh, yeah. This is not normal, Dan. I'm sorry. I know what you're saying. You're saying it's abnormal. I know it's abnormal. This is unparalleled. I even asked ChatGPT, I said, has anybody ever done anything like this before across so many industries and dominated them? And every single major bet he's ever taken.
Maybe Leonardo.
He said, no, nothing is,
Nobody?
There's nobody across the broad range of technologies and industries. There's no comparable person in history. And I know people might not like him or not. I don't care. This guy has made more everything on the line bets and won every single time than any person I've ever seen.
Well, he's, and our generation, he's clearly the sort of most productive, top thinking, active guy.
See, there's hope for us people in our 50s.
Yeah,
he's the same age as us. He's a bit younger than me. He's probably about the same as you.
Yeah, there's lots of. It's interesting how different he is also from the boomer. It's there is a transition there, and he's out there pumping Doge, and I mean it's just the funniest thing that we have this Doge department, which started as a joke on Twitter. It's like we're living in the Twilight Zone, right? Like, Elon, you should do Doge and Department of what? There's one guy who came up with the idea.
That's right.
It's like your banana thing is now on his rocket ships. I mean, on his spaceship.
Yeah.
Look, his rockets have a picture of your banana. It's the craziest thing. Like, what
world are we in? I know.
I know.
And, he is, and I know he is going to integrate Dogecoin into the whole payments platform of X. Of course he will.
Yeah, into X. I thought you were going to say the U.S. government. I don't know about that.
No, not the U.S. government, but into X.
Yeah, for fun.
For the hell of it.
The guy's got a sense of humor about the whole thing, and that's what, I think people are really drawn to that too.
It's Elon's world and we live in it. Somebody said that. It's like we live in a massive game and he's the only character in the game. We're just non-player characters in the game. But it's kind of true. He's like, I think it's funny if we create Doge to be the world's biggest currency. Call it the government department over it. Stick bananas on a rocket. I mean, he doesn't care. He just doesn't care.
Well, that one where the bigger sponsors were leaving Twitter, and he basically said, F you, you can F off or F you. And you said it like 10 times in a row. You saw that on...
that was the Bob Iger from Disney. Fuck you, Bob. It was like, wow.
Right, because he was right, and he has conviction, and he continues to sort of shape our world more than certainly anybody else I know. I don't know why we've digressed onto this, but
I know, but it is
seem to be some like psychological, sociological, historical shift that's happening now that feels very different than any other time in my life. It's not just, Carter to Reagan, which felt like a massive shift. This is, yes, the end of sort of wokeness. I feel like he's going, that whole trend is over. There's some sort of new, but it's like a new zeitgeist that's being put forward.
Yeah, the technologists have taken over the White House.
That's what it is?
That's what it is. The accelerationists and technologists.
Yeah.
I don't know if you probably haven't had time yet. Mark Andreessen was on Joe Rogan last night for 3 hours.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Watch it.
Yeah.
He is grinning like a kid.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the greatest fucking time because they were all involved. All of the crypto packs were involved. Elon was involved. JD Vance is a ex-VC. Vivek, it is all an accelerationist government. So this is why we have never had a government of this type ever. I don't think anywhere in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and so this whole exponential age idea, that's what
it is. We finally have accelerationists, exponentialists running the government. The government has always been terrible. I always say Trump, he's the first president we ever had that actually knew where the S&P 500 closed every day. And, that to me was valuable. He had a sense for the market. And now we're super.
So what you're picking up,
tech guys, and everything feels completely different, and everything that felt bad in the last 4 years feels gone. It literally feels gone. It feels.
This was what Mark Andreessen was exactly saying. He's like,
it's just overnight. I don't know what to.
So we've had a revolution or a mutiny or whatever you want to call it, right? An overthrow of government by technologists to say, this is the one way forward, right? This is the Elon thing, is like, we must move forward. That's, I think, what you're picking up is, it is the biggest wholesale change. It's not at the margin change. This is a complete redirection.
It's been developing. I mean, many people, and I sort of feel myself in this group too, but many people the last few years were really dissatisfied. And, that woke mind virus thing that Elon talks about, it was really real if you lived in America. You really felt it. I've been on the board of my school for 16 years now, and you really felt that it was changing things. The Ivy League schools have become disastrous. Like my school, Brown, I don't even know what happened to it. It turned into this extremist left-wing kind of thing. It was bad before, but it just became absurd. And now it just seems like that's just the tip of the iceberg of the change. It's a philosophical,
It's not about left or right. It's not a left or right thing. It's a complete restructuring of worldview and how the next election will be voted on technology.
It's not a left or right thing. You're right. Look at the administration.
It's not left or right.
And that one tweet that he has that I think is phenomenal. That's what was it? We were once all Democrats, and it's a picture of Trump, Kennedy, Elon. I forgot who the fourth person was, but
Gabbard.
Oh, was it? Okay, so it's the four of them, and that's true. I mean, I was never a Democrat. So I'm just saying, it's incredible that.
Yeah, Andreessen was a Democrat. Ben Horowitz was a Democrat. Brian Armstrong. They were all Democrats.
Yes, they were all of them. And now they've come together under the Republican Party because the concept, I think, really of freedom, I think that's what this is. There's a little bit of a libertarian streak to this because, with Kennedy, et cetera, I think people were just sick and tired of being told what to do. The regulation that came into, post 2008 in the financial system, people were being told how to think, what bathrooms they could go into, all this kind of thing. It just got too much. And the technology guys are all about freedom of information, movement, right? Not being stuck in any one area, right? A lot of the digital nomad concept. So I think that's really, so if we think about that in the future, how does that play out?
Well, my view on this is the next election is fought over, don't forget AI is going to be AGI by then. The world is very different. And there's going to be one group that are like, slow down, we don't want this. And another group say, let's keep going to Mars. Right?
Wait a second, hold on a second. Did we just get rid of the slow down group? Was this election not right or left, but not slow down?
No, I think we perceived it, or those who are more futurist minded saw that. Elon forced it through, but the other party were fighting a different election. They were fighting the left-wing ideology versus the right-wing ideology. This was not that battle.
Right. We're fighting exactly.
And so the next battle will be whoever defines, what rights do AI have?
Yeah, but who's going to be reactionary on this? Like what group is going
Christ.
to... There has to be an accident. There has to be something that if things accelerate, there's an accident.
Of course there will be, Dan.
All of those people who say, oh, look, the accident. You know what it's like? It's like the people in 1915 who said, oh, we can't all have cars because a car killed somebody on the road, and therefore we should stay with our horses. And that is the thing, that we're going to have some sort of accident. And then you have all those people hand-wringing who don't want to, push ahead, right?
That's right. And it will be to do with AI changing job structures as well.
Correct.
Could be. When people start losing jobs, it's like, whoa, we don't want them to take over us. It's like pro the AI and against the AI and the robots coming. People don't realize Amazon, I think, now employs more robots than humans, and it keeps accelerating. So they are coming. So that societal shift is going to be very problematic. People don't realize it yet, but it's going to be very problematic.
It's the risk takers against the risk aversion people.
Yes, and also the people who are optimistic and say we will figure it out. Of course, we'll make mistakes and there'll be some big messes, but over time, progress makes humanity better. And another group will say it's going too fast. We can't keep up. We don't want it.
Yeah, look, this is definitely right now, feels to me, the most optimistic, best, most optimistic about the future time, I want to say almost ever. I mean, that I recall in the US since the 1970s. I mean, there were moments where things were, good, or you had a positive outlook, but this is crazy. I honestly, I have never, and I can feel it, and you can see it. And just people's reactions and the energy that's pent up, that's being let out. And so what probably happens is we just go to an extreme. So, the 20s were a great period, the 1920s. Maybe it's the 2020s and we have a rip-roaring period into 2029, and then we have a market that crashes 60%. And then all the hand-wringers come out and they say, oh, you see, all this innovation, and it just led to a crash, and they forget that, of course.
My view is that the underlying structure of the economy changes beyond 2030 in ways we don't yet understand. And so I think if there's a probability of a blow-off bubble cycle, it's between now and 2029.
This is it. I think this is it. You're all in max long, everything, the most, future-focused stuff. And we're going to leave a lot of people behind, a lot. And it's going to feel bad. But, the people we're leaving behind now, we need them. They're going to be the buyers in 28 and 29. They will panic. It's human nature. After, at the top, someone always has to do that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm going to watch the Andreessen thing because,
it's right up your street. You like it.
Yeah, but I feel it. I sense it. It's why I moved into this area. I think all the exciting growth this year, and I always say this, anybody under 30 should be, who's interested in financial matters, or value or economic issues, should be in this space. But then it's across the board. Right?
It's interesting because I get lots of friends' kids. Like, can you speak to little Johnny about what he wants to do? He's at university studying whatever, and he wants to go and work for Goldman or work for a hedge fund. So I get them in and say, look, do not work in an industry that is in a secular decline.
Yeah.
You've got this amazing industry that's growing at 100% a year at a minimum.
Yeah.
It's all about finance and trading, but it's the future. Just please go and do this instead.
Yeah, I have one of those once a week as well.
Listen, Dan, fantastic conversation as ever.
Yeah, good to touch base. We just seem to do these every 6 months or so just to check in. I can't remember what last 6 months was, but it could not have been anything like this 6 months.
No, don't forget, it's very sideways. We had
a lot of sideways. 6 months from now, I think it could really be, gangbusters.
Yeah, I think so. 2025 is going to be an interesting year. So I think your numbers are too conservative, and I think there's a higher probability of the right tail, a slightly blow-offy cycle, not the big blow-off cycle, not the 29 cycle. That's what's in my head, but let's see how, you never know. We have to see what liquidity does as well. All right, my friend, good to see you, and we'll chat soon. So hopefully you enjoyed the conversation with Dan. It's always a wide-ranging conversation. There's definitely a shift in the landscape. Many of the roadblocks for crypto have been cleared. Institutions now don't have a reason not to do it. Yes, the regulation is not set yet, but a lot of the hurdles are all gone. And the world will start shifting faster and faster to this new technology and these new rails. And it's there for us as an opportunity to unfuck all of our futures. So I really hope you take advantage of that, and let's unfuck our futures together. Take care.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Look, if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button and check out the video here on the right-hand side. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one as well. And if you're ready for more, go to realvision.com/join. I'll see you there.